Hello, this is Yaakov Kronenberg, and tonight we'll do another class on the Capricorn ascendant and Saturn in the different signs. Tonight we'll do Saturn in Leo. Very interesting combination. We've seen it in lots of famous people. It sometimes brings great success, and sometimes it brings a fall afterwards, depending on the character of the dispositor. For example, Napoleon had it; he had his fall, and a lot of famous people. For example, Bill Clinton had Saturn and Leo, and again very powerful in his chart. They tried to impeach him, but he successfully escaped the big fall, right? Because he had a beautiful sun in Leo, and it took over, and today's one of the most respected men in America after all that he went through. So again, it's nothing is so simple as just seeing Saturn in Leo, because it's in detriment, and it's in the 10th house, or bring a fall, or in different places it could bring some kind of disgrace sometimes, but it's not always. Again, it's depending on the aspects and things like that. But Saturn in Leo in a Capricorn ascendant, it's going to fall in the 8th house, the house of death. People say it's the house of change. The Indians call it the house of change, because I guess you're changing from one world to the next. That's death, and change is something that people fear almost as much as death. People really, for the most part, don't like change. They like to be set in their ways and not like too many surprises and changes. So when you have Saturn in Leo, it can cause some kind of problems, because it's in the 8th house, and the 8th house is some kind of negative energy there. But in any case, if you have, it's also connected with sexuality. It can sometimes bring problems in that area. Again, everything is dependent on the person. We'll see tonight's a very famous man who had it, Capricorn rising with Saturn in Leo. But Saturn in Leo in the 8th house, the 8th house rules other people's money. A lot of times the person acquires great wealth with Saturn in Leo. I've seen charts of a few financiers actually in my lifetime. A few financiers, very, very wealthy men, they had Saturn in Leo. It brought them great wealth. They had other aspects, of course, going along with that, but it's an indication of a lot of wealth. It's an of inheritance. It's an indication sometimes of interest in the spiritual, in the hidden things, in the hidden realms, in psychology. Right? Saturn in Leo says Leo wants to bring everything forward. Person who has Leo, a ruling planet, they want to express. They want to be the front and center. They want to be, they want to be, seen and recognized. They want to be the center of attention. Right? And Saturn is the planet of inhibitions and sorrow, and sometimes this being front and center can cause some kind of inhibitions, and go together with Saturn. It can bring. That's why they say sometimes it's a planet of downfall, because it's misfortune coming with power. Right? Leo rules the power, the king, and Saturn is the fall of the king. And so sometimes you see that, and sometimes you don't. Again. Like, for example, Bill Clinton's chart, where he didn't fall at all. And Adraba is still one of the most respected men in America today. And so I'm going to show you somebody else tonight, too, that had a lot of problems, but yet he was tremendous. One of the most beloved entertainers in America, and he had this combination. We'll see that in a minute. But Saturn it's sort of a difficulty with Saturn in Leo, because they're two different energies. But if they can be balanced properly, they can, of course, lead somebody to great good fortune. They always build person has a lot of pride, a lot of confidence in himself, a lot of ego. He's very proud of his family, of his background, who he is, where he comes from. It's in that sense, it's very nice. I've seen a lot of people who they're very proud of where they came from, of their families. They have Saturn in Leo, and in the 8th house, so it's going to work towards 8th house affairs, right? A lot of people, I've seen famous Kabbalists who had that, right? Because they could reveal the secrets. Leo is as a planet that brings everything to light, and Saturn is a deep thinker, deep investigator, and when it's in the house of the secrets, they can be tremendous ability to reveal secrets, to bring things to light. I remember there was a great researcher also had this combination, Saturn and Leo in the 8th. He studied sexuality in America and brought it forth in that sphere. Tonight I want to look at a chart of a very famous man. He was probably the most highest paid performer in America in the 1950s to 70s. He was so popular that he was only known by one name, Liberace. He was called Liberace, something like that. I remember I had a female relative at the time. I was maybe 16, 17. I had a 60-year-old female relative, and she would never miss his shows. I mean, she was in love with the guy. He was just tremendously popular, the man. He exuberated warmth and love, and with that, even though he was a Capricorn, that cold Capricorn, because he had Saturn and Leo, he was in love with himself, and he was so in love with himself, other people fell in love with him. And I guess he had Saturn also connected. He had Saturn and somewhat connected with Neptune. They were in the same sign, so it made him, he was tremendously flamboyant. He wore also, again, the people who are in entertainment, they really think highly of themselves, and they want to express themselves. And he, with Saturn and Leo, he wore the most exorbitant clothing, and had, he was known for a giant candelabra on his piano, and he was a master of exuberance and excess. He lived a life of tremendous excess. And I think he was popular until the end of his life, actually. He was very, very successful man. He was a tremendous entertainer. Like I say, he's probably the most successful entertainer financially in America, which is saying a lot. He had 3 planets in the 5th house also. Given that artistic ability, he was a pianist, right? But he was a tremendous showman. The Saturn and Leo made him a showman, right? But he had his problems. Again, he had tremendous excess, wore this incredible clothing worth fortunes. But he was known for his he hid his homosexuality. He had a number of court cases that newspapers claimed he was a homosexual, and he sued them that he wasn't, and it was never really clear because he always denied it until the end of his life. But eventually, when he died, the coroner, the people said he died of heart disease and this and that. But in the end, it was revealed that he died of AIDS, and that was in the beginning of the AIDS, and it came out sort of, So if he had a fall, that was probably the fall that, that brought him down. Again, his son, the ruler of the planet that disposits Saturn, is in the 5th house, so it impinged on his love affairs, right? It caused right? The Sun also conjoined Mars there in the 5th house. But he was a very, very popular man. He had Jupiter and Venus and Pluto all together in the 7th house in Cancer. Jupiter exalted, tremendous showman, tremendous before the public, tremendously loved, tremendously. Very, very successful man. I thank everybody for listening.